Okay, I want you to just pause for a second and think about appetite.
Mm.
And I don't just mean, looking at a menu and deciding what sounds good.
Right.
I mean that deep, primal, almost aggressive craving you get when you are truly famished.
Oh, yeah, when your body's just screaming at you.
Exactly. When you hit that point, what do you reach for? Do you instinctively grab the thing that is actually going to nourish you, build your energy back up?
Or do you grab the sugary snack, the thing that gives you that quick hit, kills the hunger for maybe 20 minutes?
And then leaves you crashing an hour later.
Yeah.
It's the universal dilemma, isn't it?
It really is. That
No.
battle between the sugar rush and real nutrition, it dictates our physical health, but as we're going to see today, it dictates a lot more than that.
That distinction between just satisfying a craving and actually nourishing yourself, that is the absolute heartbeat of the material we are unpacking today.
And we have a really fascinating source.
We do. It's a devotional transcript, so essentially a sermon titled, "Milk is Good for Babies."
It was delivered just recently, February 9th, by Pastor Huzi Kang of the Beipu Church.
And before you tune out thinking, wait, I didn't sign up for a theology lecture.
Which is fair.
It is, but let's frame the mission of this deep dive. Yes, the source is Christian scripture, a letter from Peter specifically.
But the analysis Pastor Hugh builds on it is just a masterclass on the psychology of growth, on the danger of stagnation.
And specifically, the training it takes to go from being a passive consumer to an active leader.
Exactly. Whether you're, managing a team, learning a new skill, or exploring your faith, the patterns he identifies are everywhere.
He talks about the danger of becoming a giant infant.
What a term.
Isn't it? It just vividly captures this type of person we have all met, and he talks about the regimen needed to stop that from happening.
And to really get why he's hitting this theme so hard, we have to understand the setting he describes.
The source gives us this incredible atmospheric texture.
It does. It's a Monday morning. It's the start of the final work week before the Lunar New Year holidays in Taiwan.
I can just picture that. It's that specific checkout vibe, Everyone's there, but mentally, they are already on vacation.
Totally. He notes that it's cold, it's raining, and everyone is distracted. They're thinking about their year-end bonuses.
They're waiting for Weya.
Those big year-end company banquets, yeah. The lucky draws, the big feasts.
So people are physically hungry for a feast and hungry for cash. But Pastor Hu's point is that while they're distracted by all this, they might be spiritually starving.
And that's where he drops his central metaphor. He quotes 1 Peter chapter 2, and the key phrase he just anchors everything on is pure spiritual milk.
Pure spiritual milk. It sounds a little abstract, maybe?
Yeah.
A bit soft. But the way he unpacks it is surprisingly aggressive.
It is. The source compares the learner or the believer to a newborn baby.
Mm-hmm.
And think about a newborn. They don't eat because it's a logical decision. They eat because they have this fierce, instinctive craving for milk. It is survival.
If they don't get it, they scream.
Right. And Pastor Hu emphasizes this milk has to be pure. No impurities, no additives. It has to be the real thing if it's going to cause any growth.
But here's where the source takes a turn that I found genuinely funny.
Oh, yeah.
You'd expect a pastor using this metaphor to say something like, "And I've always loved the milk of the word."
That's the standard script, isn't it?
Right. But Pastor Hu, he goes completely off script. He shares this personal story where he admits he actually grew up hating milk.
And the irony is just so rich. His father literally worked at a dairy farm.
The Borden Dairy Farm specifically. Can you imagine?
He's surrounded with this stuff.
His dad's at the source and he can't stand the taste of it. He says his mother tried everything.
Everything. Adding syrups, mixing in powders.
Trying to make it sweet, trying to make it palatable. The classic hide the vegetables strategy.
We see it everywhere.
And he just says simply, neither worked. And that is the key insight he pulls from it.
It's a profound point.
He argues that if you don't have a natural appetite for the core material, in this case, God's word, or truth masking it with sugar, doesn't solve the problem.
And that's a huge observation on human behavior, on education. We see it in the secular world all the time. If a student or an employee doesn't have the hunger for the raw truth, our first instinct is to gamify it. We dress it up. We add sugar.
And we try to trick them into consuming it.
But Pastor Hugh warns that this leads to a dangerous place. He says when people lose their taste for pure milk, they don't just stop eating. They turn to what he calls entertaining religious substitutes.
Entertaining religious substitutes. That is a stinging critique.
It's scathing.
Yeah.
Because it implies you're filling up on content that makes you feel like you're participating, but it's just empty calories.
Entertainment disguised as depth.
Exactly. And he connects this intake directly to the output. Why do you need the pure milk? It's not just to feel full, it is to grow into a peacemaker.
I like that distinction he made. He contrasts peacemakers with problem makers.
He says if you're fed on the right stuff, the pure truth, you promote unity. But if you're fed on substitutes, on the sugar, on junk food,
You become a source of conflict. You become a problem maker.
the diet dictates the behavior. It makes perfect sense. If you're jacked up on sugar and have no nutrition, you're going to be agitated, you're going to be useless.
But here's the pivot in the source that really caught my attention. He doesn't want people to stay on milk forever, right?
No, and that is absolutely crucial. Milk is for beginnings. It's essential for survival at the start.
Right.
But you cannot stay on it. If you do, you run into the syndrome he identifies, the giant infant.
The giant infant. I feel like this is a term we just need to adopt. How does he define it in this spiritual context?
He describes someone who looks physically mature. They've been in the environment for a long time, maybe years, maybe decades.
They know the lingo. They know where to sit.
They know all of that, but they lack the ability to operate independently. They can't think for themselves.
So they're big but helpless.
Completely. He says they rely entirely on spiritual nannies.
Spiritual nanny.
He's talking about the pastors, the leaders. The giant infant sits there, opens their mouth, waits for the spoon, and swallows.
They consume, but they do not contribute.
Nothing. They expect to be fed, burped, and changed, even though they've been there for 20 years.
That is just such a vivid image of stagnation. And he gets really specific with the data here to back it up. From his own context at Beipu Church.
Yes, he says he's been ministering there for 35 years. That's a lifetime of observation.
A long time.
And he notes that over 50% of his congregation are first-generation Christians.
Which means they didn't grow up with it. They didn't have that milk phase in childhood.
Exactly. And he draws a contrast. He says there were those who had a strong foundation early on who were fed milk by their parents, and they developed an appetite.
But then there are the others.
Then there are those who treat their faith as a Sunday-only event.
This was the part that felt like a real wake-up call, honestly. He critiques the idea that a 2-hour Sunday service is enough. He calls it just a religious act.
He's asking a really logical, almost physiological question. How can you build spiritual muscle if you only eat once a week?
You can't.
Imagine if you only ate physical food on Sunday morning.
You'd be emaciated. You wouldn't be able to lift a finger, let alone run a marathon.
Precisely. But he sees people who are spiritually emaciated, and they think they're fine because they showed up for the meal on Sunday.
They haven't developed the ability to feed themselves during the week.
They are the giant infants. They're starving, but they're just waiting for the nanny to come back next Sunday.
So if you're Pastor Who, and you have a church full of potential giant infants, you have a crisis. You can't just yell at them to grow up. You need a system.
And Beipu Church apparently has a very specific training regimen. It's not passive, it's all about doing.
I was reading through the methodology he describes, and honestly, it sounds intense. This is not sitting in a pew.
No. He lists systematic teaching and reading spiritual books as the baseline. That's just the prerequisite. But then he escalates it.
He mentions the 5-minute challenge. This is where members have to get up on stage, right?
Yes. Regular members, not pastors, not professionals, they practice sharing a faith theme on stage for 5 minutes.
I mean, public speaking is already most people's #1 fear.
For sure.
Doing it in front of your congregation, explaining a concept you're supposedly learning, that's trial by fire.
It forces you to synthesize what you know. Think about the difference between reading a book and having to explain that book to a room full of people.
You can't share what you haven't digested.
It totally exposes whether you've actually swallowed the solid food or if you were just skimming.
And he doesn't stop there. He mentions a 15-minute challenge.
Where they practice actual preaching.
Wow. So he is literally handing over the microphone.
He is. And the source is explicit about the goal here. He says the objective is to treat members like the disciples Jesus led.
So the end game isn't just to have a lot of followers.
No, it's to train them to become apostles, to become teachers themselves. It's that shift from consumer to producer. That's the only way to cure the giant infant syndrome.
You have to move from being fed to being able to feed others.
He uses the analogy of becoming a chef or a master. If you're always the one eating and never the one cooking, you remain a spiritual infant.
And he brings it back to physiology again, which I think makes it so relatable. He asks the listener to imagine their physical body. If your physical body was fed with the same regularity as your spiritual life, what would your body look like?
That is a confronting question. To look in the mirror and ask, would you be starving? Would you be weak? Or maybe bloated on junk food?
He actually uses that term, junk food.
He does. He implies we fill up on things that ruin our appetite for the solid food.
Wow.
It goes right back to that first point about appetite.
Right.
If you snack on distractions, social media, outrage, gossip all week, that's the junk food. Of course you have no hunger for the deep work. You've ruined your palate.
Now, towards the end of the source, the tone shifts a bit. He zooms out. We've talked about milk, we've talked about training, but then he frames the whole Christian life as a marathon.
And not an easy fun run either. He describes it as difficult. It's filled with challenges and temptations.
He even introduces an antagonist here, the devil.
Yes, the source cites the devil as an active force trying to strike and harm the runner. It adds this sense of urgency. This isn't just about self-improvement. It's about survival in a hostile environment.
So if you're running this marathon and you have an antagonist trying to trip you up, what's in your survival kit? What does Pastor Hume say you need to make it to the finish line?
He identifies two main things. First, the muscle,
which is God's word.
the solid food we've been talking about. That gives you the strength to keep going when you're exhausted.
And the second thing?
The breath. He calls prayer the breath.
I love that image. Muscle and breath. You can't run without either.
Not at all.
If you have muscle but no breath, you pass out. If you have breath but no muscle, you collapse.
And he adds a very humble note here. He says, we need these tools because we are not as strong as we imagine.
That's a crucial admission. The giant infant thinks they're strong because they're big. The mature disciple knows they're weak, so they rely on the discipline of eating and breathing properly.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect applied to faith, you know. The less you know, the more confident you are. The more you know, the more you realize you need help.
Precisely. The training isn't to make you arrogant, it's to make you durable.
And the source ends on such a beautifully human note. We're right back in that cold, rainy weather in Taiwan.
Yes, he circles back to the moment. He wishes his listeners peace and joy during these final 5 working days. He warns them to stay warm.
And he mentions the lucky draws again.
He does. It grounds all these high spiritual concepts in the reality of daily life. He's saying, look, I know you're cold. I know you're waiting for your bonus. I know you want to win the toaster oven at the banquet.
But while you wait, don't neglect the appetite of your soul.
So let's try to synthesize this deep dive. We started with a craving for milk, that instinctive need for pure truth.
Then we looked at the danger of the sugar trap, masking the truth, or just settling for entertaining substitutes because we lack a real appetite.
Which leads to the giant infant. The person who grows old but never grows up because they refuse to eat solid food. They just rely on their spiritual nannies.
And the antidote is the training regimen. It's that shift from passive listening to active doing, sharing, teaching, cooking the meal for others.
All to survive the marathon, using the muscle of the word and the breath of prayer.
It's a complete ecosystem of growth. And what strikes me is how Pastor Hugh demands agency from his listeners. He refuses to let them be passive.
He's basically saying, I care about you, but I will not spoon feed you forever.
Because that would be tragic for you.
That is a tough love that we probably all need in some area of our lives. It's easier to be fed, but it's deadly in the long run.
Absolutely.
So here's where we want to leave you today. We want to take Pastor Hugh's challenge and just hold it up like a mirror. Forget the religious context for a second if that's not your world. Look at your own field of expertise or your passion.
And ask yourself, if you looked at your current level of curiosity and learning right now, today, are you feeding yourself solid food? Are you struggling through the dense books, the hard problems, the uncomfortable challenges?
Or, be honest,
No.
are you just surviving on sugar-coated milk? Are you just scrolling through headlines, watching the entertaining substitutes?
Yeah.
Waiting for a boss or a mentor to spoon-feed you the answer?
Are you a producer of knowledge or just a passive consumer?
Yeah, that's the question. The difference between the infant and the master might just be what's on your menu this week. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.